My name is Benjamin Abelow. I'm the author of the book, How the West Brought War to Ukraine. Since February last year, we all know that Ukraine has been involved in a terrible war with great destruction. And it is not at all my desire or aim to justify that war or to say it is okay. What I do want to do, however, is to explain why the war began and what I think should be done. Because I believe the explanations we've all been offered for how the war started and what should occur next are badly mistaken and very dangerous. We've all been told that Vladimir Putin is the new Hitler, the new Stalin, the new Tsar, and that he invaded Ukraine in a land grab like Hitler to seek Lebensraum. But this explanation is not at all true. The underlying and actual causes of this war are NATO expansion and, more broadly, the encroachment of Western military power on Russia's western border. Experts in the US and Europe have warned against the dangers of NATO expansion for over 25 years. In 1997, for example, 50 experts in the United States, many of them military hawks, including past senior officials in the State Department and Department of Defense, warned that the expansion of NATO would lead to disaster. George F. Kennan, who was previously ambassador to Moscow and actually framed the U.S. policy towards the Soviet Union of containment, cautioned that the expansion of NATO would lead to disaster and actually be the worst foreign policy decision of the entire post-Cold War period. And the warnings did not stop even then. In 2008, William Byrne, who was then ambassador to Moscow, cabled to the State Department that from Moscow, the attempt to bring Ukraine into NATO was the reddest of red lines. And it's not just the individuals who have cautioned about this. In late 2007 or early 2008, we don't know the actual date, the U.S. National Intelligence Council cautioned and issued a prediction that if NATO offered an open door to Ukraine for NATO membership, that Russia might, number one, annex Crimea, and number two, actually invade Ukraine proper. Nonetheless, these cautions were not heeded. And in fact, what is really remarkable is that after these predictions and warnings came about, those who pushed forward NATO expansion and those in favor of it stated, quite frankly, that NATO had nothing to do with it. It's really quite unbelievable when one thinks about it. The question now is, what do we do? And I believe that the simplest step, in some sense it's the simplest, but it's also the most difficult, and that is simply to recognize the reality that Ukraine will not be able to, quote unquote, win, and the West will not be able to win. And that any attempt to, quote unquote, win this war will lead to devastation, the further devastation of Ukraine. It will greatly increase the risk of a direct conflict between the US and NATO and Russia, and it will greatly increase the risk of nuclear war. Keep in mind that if a single nuclear weapon is used, that this could lead to escalation to a strategic nuclear war that could wipe out hundreds of millions or even billions of people. It will such a war would utterly destroy Europe, the United States, Ukraine, Russia, of course, and if a nuclear winter ensues, it could end human civilization. I wrote my book in order to provide information that will let people more clearly see through the false narratives that have been presented about how this war began and about what should be done now. The views I present are views that were offered and have been offered by authoritative experts, including military analysts, academic experts, and authorities of past senior officials in the State Department and Defense Department. My goal was simply to inform people and to give them something to think about how they can view this war and the possible outcomes very differently from the false narratives that they have been presented by their governments, by NATO, and by much of the media. Thank you.